Are you ready to hop in the time? Oh, we got it. This is a time machine. This is not a teleportation.
This is not a pod.
This is not a pod. Yes, whatever it's called.
Yeah, and I'm not jumping in one of those.
Me neither.
I've seen what happens.
Although Goldblum, he looks pretty good when he gets out of it the first time.
At first, he looks great.
Yeah. Refreshed.
It's like shirtless Ian Malcolm great.
Ready to go out to a club and take a uncomfortable picture with a woman.
There's a lot of sleaze in this movie. A lot more than I remembered.
Let's dive into it. You ready to get this time machine?
I'm ready. I feel like all of Cronenberg's time machine sounds are pretty similar, and it's just kind of...
Oh, yes. Yes, we're back. That's my David Cronenberg impression. Welcome back.
He's got a really great delivery of a line in Nightbreed. And it's when they... Shit. I'm laughing thinking about it. It's when they roll up on the lead character. He's with the cops. And he rolls up and he goes... And I'm paraphrasing maybe. He has a gun. He has a gun. But the way he said, I can't do it justice, but like the way his line is so, like his delivery is so funny. Love Cronenberg.
I do too. I think we've come across a little bit down maybe at times on his work, but I mean, I think he's a terrific director.
Fantastic.
He's fantastic. It's just, you watch 5 Cronenberg movies back to back to back like we've been doing, and sometimes he can wear on you a little bit, I think. Maybe
there's an oppressiveness to his films. And it's not the quality necessarily. No. It's just, man, are they man.
A brilliant but eccentric scientist begins to transform into a giant man/fly hybrid after one of his experiments goes horribly wrong. Directed by David Cronenberg, written by George Langeland, who did the short story, Charles Edward Pogue, and David Cronenberg. They did the screenplay for this. Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis, John Getz. All right, Willie.
Yes.
Haven't seen this in a while. This is the Cronenberg movie I've seen the most. I think
same.
The last time I watched it was on a Fear Fest a while back.
Okay.
On an AMC. I think it's still called Fear Fest. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. During the Halloween season?
Yep. So I think this is the closest thing for me, Cronenberg-wise, to like a classic Halloween movie. Like we tend to like more fun Halloween movies.
Yeah, for sure. No, this one could potentially be in the rotation, for sure. And I think you've mentioned before, like this is probably his most like studio movie, like his most... I mean, it's certainly his most well-recognized movie, right? I think most people, when they think of Cronenberg, think of The Fly first.
I think so. At least as far as horror fans go, I would say. Or maybe...
Yeah. Pre-history of violence Cronenberg, certainly.
Yeah.
I think of The Fly. It's great. I don't know. It's funny because, like, The Fly is one of those... It's not like one of my all-time favorite horror movies. I'm not going to sit here and say that. But it's so good. And it does everything with such a briskness. It doesn't bullshit around. Like, it gets to the meat of everything, literally sometimes.
Yes.
It gets to the meat of everything that it needs to get to without, like, there's no fat on this thing. It just does what it needs to do. It develops its characters.
No fat on Jeff Goldblum either.
No, it's shredded. It develops all of its characters. It takes you through multiple arcs, even with some supporting characters. And it's not a huge cast, but I'm thinking of what's the guy's name, Stannis or something. What's the Gina Davis's character? Her boss.
Stathis Barans.
Yes.
By John Getz.
I keep thinking of there's a character on Game of Thrones called Stannis Baratheon, and I keep thinking of Stannis Baratheon.
I bet old Double R took that.
He likes The Fly.
Yeah. Yes, when he's not blogging about Jets and New York Giants NFL games. You go on his blog. Go on George R. Martin's blog. He ain't writing any books. He's blogging about the Jets and the Giants.
He's the funniest to me. Honestly, he rules. I think he's great.
Remember he showed up at
He's not going to write that book.
No, he showed up at a Sharknado a few years back.
Yeah, he doesn't care about that. He doesn't. Come on.
But yes, he 100% has seen and enjoyed The Fly.
Yes. But anyway, so it does all of it accomplishes so much and tells such a complete story, from the character work to the themes to, but it does it all in this like hour and 30-some minute package.
Yeah.
And it just moves and it works. It's just, it is just a pure film in terms of like it's told so well. The story's told so well in the medium of a 90-minute movie. It just works. Like, I think it fires on all cylinders. I think it's certainly my favorite movie of his that we've talked about on the show, and I think it's my favorite film of his. Period. I like others as well, but I think this is probably my favorite. So, yeah.
Yes, I would. This is my favorite. I think it's my favorite Cronenberg movie.
Yeah.
I think this is one of this time around, it really, really worked for me. More than it's ever, and I've always enjoyed it. But man, this time I'm like, oh, maybe this is one of my favorite movies. And it does what I also watched the original, the Vincent Price movie before. It's not really a Vincent Price movie. The original's different than I remembered it because it's a movie that starts out and then it immediately tells the rest of its story through flashback.
Yes.
And it's more about kind of the disintegration of the female lead in that movie. And Vincent Price kind of plays a side character in it. And it was different than I remembered it. But it does...
And Vincent Price is not the Fly.
Right.
Right.
Yep. And it does what Carpenter's Thing does, too, which is it updates a 1950s movie, but it's a different take on it, and it does what a remake, in my opinion, what I like it to do. I don't want to say what it should do, because, I mean, it's up to whoever, but it's what I like a remake to do, which is to take the same kind of premise and spin it a little differently.
Well, I think I love that you mentioned The Thing, and I wanted to do that too, because I think there are 3 films, and none of them was The Fly a big box office hit? It wasn't. I mean,
I missed that.
I don't think it was any sort of huge hit. The Thing definitely wasn't. But anyway, I think these movies critically got a lot of crap because during the 80s you had a lot of critical blowback on horror in general, mostly as a response to the rise of the slasher genre and the gore and the blood and guts and the more extreme stuff that was coming out in the 80s.
Oh, you know what though? This did. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. But
no,
I wanna,
okay.
Yeah, this was his biggest hit. Cronenberg's biggest hit. It made $60 million with a $9 million budget. So
okay, this was a hit. Okay.
Yep.
But there was a lot of criticism about The Thing with regard to it's just another schlocky blood and guts thing. They ruined a classic 50s horror film, right? And I think there's 3 movies that are all made in the 80s, all remakes of black and white films from that era. And I think the 3 of them make a great kind of triple feature of like perfectly modernizing a story that could seem hokey that was made 30 years before or whatever. I don't remember what year the original Fly came out, but
58, I think.
58.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I think The Thing was before that.
80s. Oh yeah. That was mid 50s, I think.
Yeah.
I want to say 54.
And the other one I was going to mention is Chuck Russell's The Blob.
The Blob.
Those 3 are like the perfect remakes, in my opinion, for horror remakes.
Yep.
I think remakes are kind of out of style now. Now it's the legacy sequel or the requel or whatever the hell they call them. But I think if remakes come back again, these are 3 good movies to use as a template. Do something different with it. Keep the spirit alive. Keep the basic idea alive, but don't be afraid to like tell your own story and stretch.
Yes, and I think too there is a reverence from the filmmakers that remade those movies.
All 3 of them.
All 3 of them. Yes, because Carpenter was a huge Howard Hawks fan. Huge Howard Hawks fan. You can see his influence throughout his movies. And The Fly wasn't Howard Hawks, but Cronenberg, you can see Howard Hawks' influence on this too, in the way this movie's a screwball comedy for about half of it, like a screwball romantic comedy. It's like His Girl Friday or something.
It's crazy.
It's like it's
it's an element I forgot about.
I did not. Yeah, so you can see the influence of those 50s movies. And Hawks, of course, dipped his toe in the genre with The Thing. But you can see those 50s movies. You can see the DNA in these films. Chuck Russell as well.
Yeah,
so you can see there's a certain... These people that are remaking these movies, they grew up and they liked going to see these movies.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
They have an attachment to it, where a lot of those remakes, and I like some of them, but like when you're talking about those Platinum Dune remakes, it was Michael Bay gobbling up it was Michael Bay, Platinum Dunes, or whoever gobbling up that name,
potentially viable properties,
and just
making
getting
a music video version of
right. And there are remakes that I like, but there's a hollowness to them, I think.
Well, or it's situations I think from the heavy remake era where, like Rob Zombie, and like I'm not the world's biggest Rob Zombie fan, but Rob Zombie, here's a guy who he didn't have an interest in remaking Halloween.
He wanted to do Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, yes. He didn't want to remake Halloween, and I wouldn't want to say he was forced into it because he just wasn't forced into it, but he was coerced a little bit into going with it and stuff. And I mean, it's just. So I think a lot of those remakes from that era, that early to mid 2000s, suffer from that. I think some of the better remakes of that era are the ones that those rare occasions where you do have a director who actually, like the House of Wax remake is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think that's an example because it does feel like it's kind of reverent to that. And actually, House on Haunted Hill, I think, is a fun remake.
I would agree. Yeah.
But I think that once again is a movie that feels like there's some love there for the original. It's not just a way to try and use a name to.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I watched there was an interview with the screenwriter, and it's an older documentary now. I think it's called Fear the Flesh or Fear of the Flesh, The Fly. And it's an interview with the screenwriter. He kind of talks about like he zeroed in on the things he liked in the original, even if it were very hokey, even by 1980s standards. So, all right, let's dive into this plot.
Let's do it.
Brilliant but eccentric. Oh, we covered that. Scientist Seth Brundle meets...
Did you know he's brilliant but eccentric?
Yes, meets science journalist Veronica Rani Quaife, I don't know, at the Meet the Press event held by Bartok Science Industries, the company funding his work. He takes her back to the laboratory of his warehouse home and asks her to exclusively document his invention. 2 pods that can teleport between them. While the telepods can transport inanimate objects perfectly, they are unable to teleport live tissue as demonstrated when a baboon, not a monkey, you make sure to mansplain or whatever you want to to her later, is turned inside out after being transported.
Which is so gnarly.
It's gross.
And such a fantastic way to set you up for what you're going to be seeing.
This movie hits the ground running, too. Yes.
Mm-hmm. It is gnarly.
So I'm going to pause here. Jeff Goldblum, I want to talk a little bit about his performance here.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, I think he's a really good fit with Cronenberg.
Really good.
Yeah, they never worked together after this. I don't know.
Weird.
Yeah, Goldblum's kind of...
He's an odd guy.
I
think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah. And I'm sure
Cronenberg's kind of an odd guy, too.
They have their quirks, but I think he's a really good fit for him because he's got that kind of nerdish quality to him, but he's also... There's an interesting aspect to him. He's facially very interesting. He's kind of quirky. He's kind of manic in some ways.
He is very much in this film and in other films, including like Jurassic Park, which I think is what a lot of people think of Jeff Goldblum. When they think of Jeff Goldblum, they think of Jurassic Park a lot of the time. I think people of a certain generation. In both films, he's playing science-y types that are, like you said, are kind of quirky, smart but quirky. But there's what's weird about Jeff Goldblum, even now, and Jeff Goldblum is like Christopher Walken now, like where like he is Jeff Goldblum is a character,
right?
Like he's, you know what I mean. But pre that, like there is even though Jeff Goldblum has this kind of, I'm trying to, I don't want to compare him to somebody that I don't like. That I'm not a fan of. I was going to say Woody Allen, right? Woody Allen was kind of the master of creating like this neurotic kind of... there was a charm to him, to his characters.
Funny enough, he was at Annie Hall.
Yeah, right. There was a neurotic quality, but there was also a charm about it. And Goldblum has a lot of that in this. But what Goldblum has in this is also like... There's a sexiness to Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
There's an intrigue and a sexiness. There's a mystery to Jeff Goldblum, and it's the same way in Jurassic Park. And there's a reason why people have tattoos of a shirtless Goldblum in Jurassic Park.
I have a coffee mug.
Yes,
yes.
People own this stuff.
I have a dog toy.
You have a dog toy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because there's a certain mystique and a certain even though he's not your traditional Hollywood leading man. He's not either in the kind of characters he plays, his personality, or his looks. there's just, you can't help but look at Jeff Goldblum and be intrigued by him.
Right.
And that in itself lends a certain kind of sexiness to him, even when he's playing a character that's kind of otherwise can be borderline obnoxious at times, can be kind of manic at times, and frustrating to watch at times. And
the scene in the diner is classic Jeff Goldblum, if you want. Yes.
Yeah. And he even he's even frustrating the Veronica character, Gina Davis's character. I mean, she's not into him right out of the gate in any sort of romantic way. It takes a little while for her to warm up to him and realize that she is attracted to him. It's not an immediate, like, she's there for a story at first. She's not going back to,
right.
That comes second, and that kind of naturally comes. And so I think that Goldblum is kind of perfect for Cronenberg, because Cronenberg, if nothing else, in all the films we've talked about, and certainly the last couple here, and his previous films that we've talked about, Rabid and Shivers and things like that, Cronenberg's films are this weird mixture of, like, kind of, I don't want to say gross sexuality, but like kind of sexuality that feels kind of wrong, or kind of like you're watching it and you're like, am I supposed to be turned on by this, or am I supposed to be grossed out by this? I don't even know. And there's that kind of mixture of that within his films, with just disgusting kind of like really out there body horror. It's kind of a weird, it's a fascination with, like, and he talks about the flesh in multiple films. There's a fascination with the flesh, both in what the flesh is capable of and the deconstruction of the flesh.
Right.
There's the thing there, and it's prevalent. It's present in all the movies we've talked about to certain degrees, and I think that is why Goldblum's perfect, like a perfect marriage for Cronenberg in this movie, because he aces both those things so well. He does have that kind of weird kind of sexiness about him in the movie, but then he also does so well at like breaking down, like mentally and physically, that like, yeah, he covers both those Cronenberg bases so perfectly. I'm done ranting about it now, but
no, it's good. No, you're right. So I want to play a quick game with you, because I've got 5 other actors here.
Okay.
Sorry, did that sound very, very sexy?
I'll play a game with you now.
So there are 5 other actors I have here
that
were rumored or attached at some point, or
considered
or I was able to find them on IMDb in the trivia section as being attached at some point. And I want to run them by you real quick, and I want you to tell me if you think it would be a very similar movie to what we got, or a completely different movie with the star, or maybe even like Cronenberg would just be like, I can't work with this
Interesting.
guy.
Okay, so before you even start naming the people, I want to say that my prediction for my opinions would be that it's going to be very different, because Goldblum is so unique.
I think there might be a couple where you go,
I'm
okay,
excited.
I can see this movie as it is
I'm
with
excited.
this actor. And the first one is, we'll go with Michael Keaton.
Oh.
There's a difference. So
Keaton would be...
I think it veers closer to similar, in my opinion.
It would be.
I think Burton was rumored to have been attached to. I think that would have been a completely different movie. But with the thing with Keaton, there are some similarities, kind of in the manic energy.
Absolutely.
But Keaton's more, like, I guess, outgoing, more vibrant, more kind of on edge. Like, he's kind of, there's like a kind of a dangerous kind of like a, I'm thinking of the scene in the You Want to Get Nuts, a Batman scene, or his performance as Beetlejuice around this time, where there is kind of an edgier quality to him, a kind of like a screw loose in some ways, and I don't get that all the time with Goldblum.
I think you would get some similar stuff certainly after, like, during, like, post Fly interaction, like when he starts to break down. I think you would get some very similar like manic stuff from Keaton. I think the immediate difference the only major difference I could think of with those two would be the immediate like courtship and attraction stuff. Because I think Michael Keaton is more of a traditional like good looking guy than like I could see Jeff Goldblum works because I immediately buy him as this quirky scientist type. Keaton would be a little bit of a tougher sell for that, I feel like.
I forgot, though. Didn't he courted Gina Davis? Didn't he? And it's Speechless.
Yes.
Do you remember the movie? They were also in Beetlejuice, but the movie Speechless with Christopher Reeve, I think.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
2 political speechwriters fall in love. So there you go. But no, yeah, I would agree with you there. I think that part would be a little different. All right, we'll move on to the next one here. Mel Gibson. 1980s Mel Gibson. So this would have been around what, Lethal Weapon 1 and 2? Mel Gibson, Mad Max.
Yeah, I would not. I mean, I've never seen him do it. I guess I don't know that I buy Mel Gibson as the scientist. I just don't. I don't see that. I don't see it, and I could see Mel getting annoyed with the prosthetics. I could see him not wanting to do any of that part. Like he'd be like, "Put a stuntman in that thing." I don't want to. I don't think Cronenberg would have a good time with Mel. And I'm not just saying that because of Mel's like
right
issues after
I
the
didn't
fact.
even think of that. Yeah,
I just don't think that he doesn't strike me as somebody who would be terribly excited to do a lot of this stuff.
Even then, there was a kind of a like wasn't he the first ever sexiest man alive? Mel Gibson,
Maybe.
Yeah, so I think he's a leading man at this point.
I don't think you can have a traditional leading man in this role. I don't.
I'm with you. Next one, this is an interesting one here. Richard Dreyfuss.
Okay, that could work. That could work. He'd be a little older, I think, at this point than I would expect the Seth Brundle character to be. But you could do some different stuff with that. Like where, Goldblum, you get kind of like he seems like he's like a young scientist who's still trying to make a name for himself. With Dreyfuss, you could almost do something more where he is, he's a guy who's been working in the field for a long time and who's been ignored for a long time, and who maybe is a little bit more bitter about it and a little bit more rugged than Goldblum is, or a little bit more, The manicness, I mean, people forget that Dreyfuss can do that. Like, he really can. He can do that kind of stuff. The only thing that escapes me is the romance angle. I don't know if Dreyfuss can put off the sex appeal aspect of
like Dreyfuss walking out of the pod shirtless and in his underwear.
I don't know if that works. Right? It doesn't have the same effect.
I tried to picture 1980s, 86 Richard Dreyfuss in my head.
Or Dreyfuss picking
isn't that like stakeout Richard Dreyfuss?
Yes. Or Dreyfuss picking up a young lady at the bar and bringing her back and having weird animalistic sex with her. I don't know.
No, to be fair, he was probably attached to a different script, a different movie. Sure. Yeah,
but I got to go with the version we see.
Yes. Sorry, now I can't get the thought of stakeout era.
You want to see a
Dreyfuss.
deep fake? Somebody get on that. Somebody talented get on that with a deep fake.
Two more, and I think in some ways they're similar actors. In some ways they're very different.
Yeah.
But coming up here, we have Willem Dafoe.
Would be amazing.
I think he would be really good at
this. Is the one that
would be the most similar, you think?
This is the first one where I go, I want to see that version. And it's not because I don't love Goldblum. I think Goldblum's perfect. I like it, but I would love to see. Mm-hmm. Yes. Willem Dafoe is kind of like, everything I've said, and I've said a lot about Jeff Goldblum because I think he's phenomenal. Everything I've said about him as an actor and as a person kind of goes with Willem Dafoe too. He has this weird, sexy stuff about him where you're like, I like this guy. Like there's a mystique about Dafoe. So yeah, Dafoe would be sweet, really good. Because what year was Streets of Fire?
I think that was 84, 85.
And Fly was
86.
Dude, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. I'd watch it.
What was the movie he was in with Madonna?
Oh, God. I don't remember. There's a lot of sexy stuff in that movie.
Yes, there is. He did some Abel Ferrara movies. Bill. Well, he was at Heaven's Gate, Wild One.
The thing with Dafoe is he'd be like
in L.A. Yeah, there would be almost a seediness to it. Platoon was around this time. Yeah. So there's less temptation of Christ.
The thing about Dafoe is he'd be like, David, I don't think we're going. I think we need to take it farther.
Yeah, he would not be wearing underwear when he came out.
No, he'd be like, I need to be nude. And then he'd be like...
Body of evidence is what I'm thinking of.
Yes, that's the one.
Yep.
And you know what he would do? He'd be like, I'll sign on to the picture, but I want a sex scene in the Fly prosthetic. He would. Because Dafoe he'd be like, I want the challenge of...
Yes.
of being sexy in the Fly. Like, that's Dafoe. Yeah.
The last one here, and I think this is an interesting one. I could go either way on. I want to hear your thoughts. James Woods, who, of course, had just worked with him on Videodrome a few years prior.
I think Woods would be all right.
I don't think Woods has necessarily the. I don't think he has the. I don't want to say James Woods does not have a screen presence to him. I think he has a different energy than someone like a Willem Dafoe or a Jeff Goldblum.
I don't think I would buy James Woods as a neurotic scientist.
Yes.
That's where. So like it's funny because there are like three elements, right, that I keep thinking of when I think of these guys potentially in this role, and I think of the scientist element, the kind of sexual energy element, like the romance element. And then, of course, the transformation stuff, the breakdown. And, like, with the exception of Dafoe and then, God, who did you say earlier on? Keaton, I can't see any of the other guys nailing all three. I can see some of them nailing, like, one or two of them, but not...
Yeah. And even Keaton, Michael Keaton's not your traditionally...
I'm on the fence with
sexy
Keaton.
Man, I guess.
But Dafoe... Yeah,
I think so. Defoe would be your second choice behind.
How has Defoe not made a movie with Cronenberg?
Weird, right?
What? Can we get these two together?
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully,
please.
All right, let's get back to this.
Yeah, right.
That was fun though. As they experiment with the invention, Seth and Ronnie begin to form a relationship using two stakes, one a control and one teleported. Seth discovers that the machine is creating a synthetic version of biological material rather than the object itself. He reprograms the system to understand the makeup of living tissue and successfully teleports a second baboon. Ronnie departs before they can celebrate, and Seth worries that she is rekindling her relationship with her editor, Stathis Borans. She actually left to confront Stathis about a veiled threat, spurred by his jealousy of Seth to publish the telepod story without her consent. While drunk, Seth teleports himself alone, unaware that a housefly had entered the transmitter pod with him. He emerges from the receiving pod, seemingly normal. So there we go.
Yeah, seems like it.
I wanted to talk about Gina Davis as well. We've talked a lot about Goldblum, because I think Gina Davis is terrific in this movie.
I think she's terrific in most movies. Yeah, she's great in this. And Gina Davis is one of those actresses where I think she's legitimately underrated.
I would agree.
Like, I think she's incredibly talented and has done some really, really cool stuff. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it was... You know what I think it was, honestly? And I hate to pin it on one thing. I think Cutthroat Island was the issue. Like...
Well, and I think some of it too. I think there was some backlash with her kind of getting. She worked with her husband quite a bit.
Yeah,
Rennie Harlan.
Yeah, on
at the
Cutthroat
time.
Island.
Yep.
And because she worked with him on Long Kiss Goodnight and maybe another movie too. But yeah, I just for whatever reason I
think it's unfair criticism, by the way. But yes,
sure.
I think. Yeah.
But her career kind of did this weird thing in the '90s where she just didn't stay as present on the big screen as I wish she would, because I always thought she was really great. A League of Their Own, fantastic. Gosh, she's good in everything. I really, really liked her on The Exorcist.
The TV show that came out, I thought she was great. Yeah.
Yes, really good. And it was nice to see her again. I like Gina Davis. And I think she's really good in this. She plays a character who is, she's strong. She's independent. She feels real. She feels vulnerable. She's put in some of the worst positions I think you could ever imagine yourself being put in multiple times in the movie. And I don't know, the character just exudes this sense of like purpose and determination, and at the end of the day there's an empathy to her character too. Like, she is understanding and empathetic of everything that even though she honestly, like, Seth Brundle can be a selfish prick, like a lot of, I think, people, scientists and people that are goal driven can be.
And I think like a lot of Cronenberg's movies post divorce, you could do some reading into how he sees maybe himself reflected in the character in a lot of ways, and as this relationship crumbles and as his insecurities begin to come out a little more, I think you could read into it if you wanted to.
You could, for sure. Yeah. But I love that her character, like, she really legitimately sticks by him literally until the end. Like, she fights for him because she does care about him, you know, and she doesn't. I think she's great.
Her and Goldblum have great chemistry. They pull off that.
They were dating at the time.
They were dating. I think they were married for a few years after as well. And then she got divorced, and then she ended up marrying Rennie Harlan. And they were divorced later on, too. But the chemistry is there on screen. And part of it is, and I think this plays into kind of what you're talking about with Gina Davis. She's a tough, I think it was Roger Ebert who talks about it. And he mentions she's a tough actress to cast because of how she looks. She's tall.
She is tall.
She's very tall. She's got a very unique look about her. She's almost kind of. Her and Goldblum are a perfect physical match in a lot of ways because they're the same height. They both have kind of interesting facial features.
They do.
Yeah, they're both.
They're not immediately. You don't look at them and immediately go like, "Oh, that's a leading lady and a leading man."
Right.
Not immediately.
Right.
And that's not a knock on either one of them. They're just not.
Yes.
The stereotypical.
Yeah, but when you put them in a room together, I buy those two completely as a couple.
They feel real.
Yes.
Yes.
So I think that helps out with the first half of the film, and then where she really shines is as the movie goes on, because it becomes very much about her in the middle of essentially two overbearing men. And as we get in, we'll talk about it when we get to it, but there's some very interesting abortion related stuff later on in this movie that was another thing that took me by surprise.
It feels pretty.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what she also does sell, and just keeping with the relationship between her and Brundle, it's her face at the end of the movie. You're brokenhearted. She knows this thing is disintegrated to the point of no return, this relationship, but she still does not. She doesn't want to kill this person. And it's a heartbreaking tragedy. It
is one of the most truly tragic endings. It's a tragedy. It is, and it. This time, it's always affected me, but this time around, I was like, man, that ending hits hard. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, yes, the build up to it, like you said, the most important part of this movie, and the reason why it works so well is because of Goldblum and Gina Davis's chemistry and how great they are together. The most important part is the build of the relationship, because if you don't have that and it doesn't feel genuine, everything that happens afterward would not hit as hard as it does. Mm-hmm. This is not a super long movie, so they have to develop that pretty quickly. And they do, but at the end we have to remember Gina Davis is now acting opposite an animatronic creature.
Right.
She does not have an actor to interact with at this point. Yes, she's interacting with the Brundle character. That's all Gina Davis. I mean, it is. And so hats off to her, because she absolutely, no pun intended, kills it.
After Seth and Ronnie reconcile, Seth exhibits sugar cravings. I mean, who doesn't? As well as increased strength, agility, stamina, and sexual potency.
I don't feel any of that.
Especially after sugar, which he believes resulted from the teleportation purifying his body. When Ronnie becomes concerned about Seth's deteriorating sanity and both the strange bristly hairs growing from a wound on his back.
So gross, dude.
This is a gooey movie.
I thought that the chest vagina was gross. In Videodrome.
Yes.
This is grosser. I'm just saying. It's disgusting.
Yes. Seth becomes aggressive, insisting that the process is beneficial. He tries to force Ronnie to undergo teleportation, but she refuses. Seth goes to a bar and partakes in an arm wrestling match, another gross part.
So sweet.
This is really great. Leaving his opponent with a compound fracture. Yeah, you call it that. He brings a woman named Tawny. Sorry. Great name.
Great name for a character that is the character that the guy picks up at the bar.
What's a nice old fashioned word? A trollop. Maybe a nice old fashioned word for this.
There you
go. Hey, no trollop shaming on this show.
No.
Back to the warehouse where they have sex. After which Seth tries to coerce her into teleporting. He's really stuck on. This is his move.
Yeah.
Ronnie intervenes and Seth throws her out. When his fingernails begin falling off, he realizes something is indeed wrong. He checks his computer records and discovers that the telepods confuse the two life forms, fusing him with the Fly at the molecular genetic level. All right, let's talk about the effects here. Yes.
Incredible.
Chris Wallace did the effects. He also did the effects for Scanners, so he'd worked with Cronenberg before.
There's some good stuff in Scanners too. It's more. It's not. There's not as much of it, but
I don't think he gets as ample an opportunity to show off as he does here.
He really shows up. This is some of the best stuff of this era, of this decade.
Yeah, he's done some memorable stuff. Raiders, he did Raiders of the Lost Ark,
Incredible
of course.
stuff.
Yes, incredible stuff at the end of that. Gremlins, he did work on.
Incredible
He
stuff.
did some work on E.T. and then Enemy Mine. You remember Enemy Mine?
I love Enemy Mine.
Yes.
Right here on my shelf, buddy.
He did the makeup for that. And the makeup for that is
Oh, no, it's in the box.
makeup for that is very good. So
Yeah,
yes.
Lou Gossett Jr. is like phenomenal.
In Enemy Mine, yes.
Oh God, rules.
So yeah, the effects in this.
They're fantastic, and it, like I said, this is like when I think of 80s effects movies that feature like those classic prosthetic effects. This is way up there for that decade. The Thing has always been up there. Day of the Dead's always way at the top of the heap for me. There's certain movies that like this is one of them where I'm like, it doesn't get much better than this. We're hitting our peak here in '86 of like what you can accomplish with.
Right.
Yeah, I just wish we saw it more often now. I think a lot of this holds up.
Me too. I don't understand. I get it in
weird.
some ways. But I guess I don't understand. Maybe it's time consuming. The other thing I do forgive, especially on bigger budgets,
Sure.
like your superhero movies, I do forgive it a little because they are under such a crunch a lot of the time. And I'm not talking about forgiving directors specifically because they don't have a hand in not paying people,
Yeah.
but or making them work more hours to get this stuff done.
Yeah.
But I do forgive a director for going, let's just use CGI. Like for this shot because we've got to get this cut.
They can't.
now.
Yeah. The schedule's already locked in and they can't. Yeah.
But I'm with you. And honestly, I think
I miss some of this stuff though. I legitimately do.
I think one of the reasons something like just off the top of my head, like the Terrifier has like caught on in some ways is because it uses a lot of really gnarly effects work.
What is okay? Oh God, you got to help me out here. I really liked the movie. I swear, I don't remember the title, of course. I believe it was like a Kickstarter, like a crowdfunded movie, and it takes place in a hospital, and there's a ton of cool Thing-esque creature effects in it. What is the name?
Are you talking about The Void?
Yes.
Yes, the dude that did The Void has done a couple things. He did that Day of the Dead show too. I didn't watch it, but
Okay,
yes.
I didn't,
No,
yeah.
sorry.
No, it's all good. No, that had some.
There's some great practical effects.
It threw
in
me
that.
back. Yeah, to that time.
I think that caught on with a certain, and I don't understand. I'm with you. I don't understand why.
It's a bummer.
Yeah, why?
And I
we
know
see
one of those
so
guys
much-
who's like, CGI sucks. I mean, no, CGI is important, and sometimes it can be absolutely phenomenal and incredible. I just miss some of the practical effects in some of these horror movies. I do.
Even as much as I loved Malignant, I remember there being a little bit
Wonkiness.
CGI.
I still haven't seen Malignant.
Oh, you got to see it.
I know. There were some good practical effects in Halloween Kills, though.
That was the other one that popped in my head, and maybe a better example than Terrifier. I just didn't use it because it's so divisive. of a movie.
Hatchet's got some good stuff.
Hatchet's got some good stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it exists,
Right.
but I want to see more of it. So
A couple other things I just wanted to touch on here. It was Cronenberg has kind of talked about he's okay with people interpreting this movie however they want to interpret it. He didn't mean it. A lot of times in the 80s movies, every horror movie or anything like this that kind of deals with a deteriorating condition of body is tied back to AIDS.
Oh yeah.
And he didn't mean it to be that way. He actually, part of his direction to Gina Davis was when he's like, act like he's dying of cancer.
That to me, it reads more like that.
Yes. And
Yeah.
it reads more like that. It reads more like old age, like
Sure.
like the character coming to grips with old age. And,
Yeah, I can see that.
yeah, I feel like The Fly every morning. I wake up.
I never took the yeah right. I never got the AIDS thing with this. That never. I mean, I get it.
I get it too, but there's not
I never got that.
a lot of times that stuff works more when it's like something transmissible between. Like Prince of Darkness is kind of what I think of when I think of like an AIDS
100%,
metaphor,
yeah.
because it's transmissible through contact.
100%.
Yeah,
Yep.
this is more. I mean, this is more in line with the original movie, which is like a scientist specifically messing in a realm that she should not be messing in the realm of the gods, if you will. It's a very classic. It's so funny to me because I mention this every episode, but Cronenberg is doing comic book movies. This is a Hulk movie.
Yeah,
Like this is an incredible
Absolutely.
Hulk movie in some ways. So. For sure.
we got to add Seth Brundle to the Cronenberg Smash Bros. Game, right?
Absolutely. He had good powers.
Got to be in there.
There was an original director before Cronenberg. Robert Bierman He was the original. He's the guy who went on to direct Vampire's Kiss, the Nick Cage movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
he did a lot of commercial work. His daughter died during the pre-production of this movie.
Oh, jeez.
And Mel Brooks, the great Mel Brooks, Blazing Saddles, Spaceballs, all that good stuff.
Love Mel.
Yeah, Mel Brooks is the producer on this movie.
That's insane.
He also produced The Elephant Man, the David Lynch.
Also insane.
Yeah, but he did not want his name on the movie because of...
He didn't want it to be Mel Brooks.
Yep, he didn't want people going in thinking it was a comedy. But the original director informed him that his daughter had died, and Mel Brooks said, "Listen, I'll give you 3 months, and if you want to come back, like I will hold the picture for you." And the guy told him, like, "I can't do it." Yeah. So that's when they essentially David Cronenberg was on Total Recall at the time.
Yes,
and it fell apart,
which also would have been
crazy.
I love Total Recall.
I think Verhoeven's.
He's kind of the perfect guy for that.
Yeah, it's so tough with Verhoeven movies because they're all like. So many of them are just pure Verhoeven movies. His Total Recall would have been much different. Cronenberg's.
Yeah. I would have liked to have seen it.
Yes, there would have been some similarities though, especially with kind of the corporate stuff.
Yeah, and there's a grossness and a sexiness to Verhoeven stuff too, though.
God, I get it. Like, can you imagine him directing Arnold?
God. That would be something.
But yeah, Total Recall fell apart. Mel Brooks and the other producer on the film, whose name is escaping me, basically went to Cronenberg and said, "All right, we're going to give you this movie. We'll give you what you want money-wise, and you can rewrite the film," which he did, and they shot it in Canada because he liked Cronenberg's very loyal to his own crew, and he liked his crew, and I think that's a good thing for him, especially in these 80s movies. They all have a very consistent look to them because he's using the same cinematographer in a lot of them.
They do. They do, yeah.
Yep. Seth continues to deteriorate, losing body parts with his human appearance. After several weeks, he reconnects with Ronnie and reveals he is a hybrid of a human and an insect, which he has nicknamed Brundlefly. He has also begun vomiting digestive enzymes into his food before eating and is able to cling to walls and ceilings. He is even losing his human mentality in favor of uncontrollable primitive impulses. This is what I texted you the other day. I'm like, this is the funniest movie I've ever seen in my life. That's when he starts vomiting and eating, because now it's just turning into pure physical comedy for me. Pure gross out. It's like a Jackass movie.
For a little bit, it is, and then it comes back around to like pure just Yeah, this stuff is it's rough to watch, but it's also kind of funny. Like there's a sick humor to what's happening at this point. There's almost an acceptance of like, yeah, he's screwed. Like we might as well like enjoy the show. As horrible as that sounds. Yeah.
The effect, just to touch on the original real quick again, the effects crack me up in this because they're excellent in the original. It's so funny. It's just like a dude in a fly hat.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah. It's a guy with a fly hat on.
The original is worth a watch. It's fun. Vincent Price told, I think it was Jeff Goldblum. Goldblum asked him like what he thought of the movie. And he's like, I very much enjoyed it, but there was a certain part where you went too far, and it wasn't for me anymore. Vincent Price says, I'm guessing may have been around this part when he starts vomiting into his food.
There's a part that we'll talk about very soon that involves vomit. That my brother has quoted as like, and I was there with him when he saw it for the first time. He still will say like, I couldn't look at it.
Yeah.
Like it so deeply disturbed my younger brother that like he has like traumatized by it. Yes.
Seth installs a fusion program into the telepod computer, planning to dilute the fly genes in his body with human DNA. Ronnie discovers she's pregnant with Seth's baby and has a nightmare of giving birth to a giant maggot.
Horrific.
Remember the
maggots gross me out.
You remember the X-Men character Maggot?
I do.
Yeah, he had like maggots that came out.
Weird. I had
it was a weird
in my garbage can.
What's that?
I have maggots in my garbage can.
Yeah, that happens when you get an animal. You get a dead animal down there.
No.
Okay.
No, it's like
you got a plastic garbage can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get in there, the flies, and then you open it to throw another bag in, and you're like, no. Yeah. It's just this time of summer.
It gets like that, yeah.
Yeah, and then once it starts cooling down again, you don't have to worry about it. But
yeah, it gets gnarly.
It was gnarly, buddy.
Ronnie discovers she's pregnant. Yeah, Maggot. She demands that Seth persuade a doctor to perform an abortion in the middle of the night, but Seth, overhearing Ronnie's fears, abducts her before the procedure can take place and begs her to carry the child to term, since it may be the last remnant of his humanity.
So sad.
Stathis breaks into Seth's lab with a shotgun, but Seth disables him with his corrosive vomit to destroy Stathis' hand and foot, stopping just short of vomiting acid onto his face when Ronnie screams at him to stop. All right, we'll stop. That's the part your brother's talking about?
Oh, my God. My brother, he wasn't scared of the movie. He was just horrified by the stuff. He was already like, good God, this is gnarly. And then it got to the part where he grabs his arm and just, and my brother is still freaked out by that. And then he barfs on his leg and rots his leg away. Oh, it's just, yeah. It is gross, but yeah, that's one of Zach's all-time moments in a movie. It's my favorite.
This is where we should discuss the way abortion is handled in this movie, because please. I think it's handled very intelligently, and I think so. I mean, it becomes for this movie she's unflinching in her belief that she is going. This is her body. This is her choice.
She's getting rid of it.
She has the autonomy. Yep. She's getting rid of this.
She's made her decision,
and she's got men all around her telling her, no.
Well, she's got Stathis saying, "Oh yeah, you got to do it. You got to do it. Yeah, you got to do it." When she has a moment,
doesn't the doctor say something though to her? Maybe not. Okay, I'm thinking
he's just bitching because it's late and he doesn't want to do it.
Okay, so he's understanding.
But then Seth is like, "Please don't, please don't."
Brundle is the interesting aspect.
Well, it is, because there is so you hear a lot about in the and I don't want to get too into it. I really don't. But in the debate about abortion rights and reproductive rights for women, you do occasionally hear that kind of side commentary from people saying, "What about the father?
Right.
What about their decision? Yada, yada, yada." And so that Seth Brundle is kind of filling that part of the conversation, right? Because he's, please don't. And it's very sad. And you feel for him to a certain extent, because you're like, okay, he knows at this point, yes, he knows he's going to die. I think he knows, the little human part of him left knows that if he's not going to die, he's lost his humanity.
Right.
It's not going to get any better. There's no miracle cure. But at the same time, as sad and you can feel empathetic towards that or sympathetic towards that, and it sucks for him. But at the end of the day, and she's, she more or less says the same thing. This is my choice.
Yeah, she tells it, and there's also an interesting aspect to what you said about Brundle, because he wants deep down, all of his insecurities by this point have come to the forefront, and what he really wants is kind of that traditional nuclear family and it's what he's always wanted deep down inside, is kind of what he sees as that traditional, and even there's that idea of, I have to have a kid to carry on my legacy.
Yeah.
Right.
I
have to, in some cases, as people say, I have to have a boy to carry on the family name after I am gone. Yep. And there's a little bit of that in there too. And there's a lot of that in kind of the anti-abortion, anti-rights, anti-choice element of which is I have a say in this too. You can't do this. But what Gina Davis says is essentially no.
No, I'm not. I'm not giving birth to whatever's going to come out of me. It's not going to happen. Sorry.
Right.
Sucks, but.
And it's a bummer all around.
No, it is.
It's a sad situation all around.
No, and absolutely. And it's okay to feel sympathy even now in his deteriorated form. It's okay to feel sympathy for the Seth Brundle character, because there is a sympathetic quality to that, even though he's made really bad decisions, and even though he's about to make the decision of trying to get them all to merge into one thing via fly pod, then that's where all Seth loses me, when he's like, let's all merge together as one thing. He's gone completely.
That's an interesting thing. Yeah, that's an interesting thing too, because it's also he's trying to get back to kind of the basics, the essence of humanity, which is connection of everything. Yes. Very interesting.
Yeah, it is. There are a lot of layers to that. This portion of the movie And it's so this is the kind of movie that like. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, sorry. No. Sorry.
No, it's so easy for. I think it's be so easy for somebody to write off somebody who's maybe not a fan of horror films or, hears about The Fly, and when you hear about The Fly, you're probably going to hear about things like the guy melting a dude's leg by puking on it. Like that's what people talk about because that's the crazy shit that horror fans want to talk about. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people would write off this film, and I think it's really, really interesting, like multifaceted portrayal of like a major, major, major issue like abortion. They'd write that off purely because it's like, oh, it's one of those,
Yes.
And if you can't stomach the gore and stuff, I get it. Like I'm not like I have no issue with it. Like I understand it's not for everybody, but it's too bad that there are people who will write off a movie that's labeled as a horror movie, which this is a horror film, that label movies in a certain way and assume that there's not anything worth like talking about afterwards. There's no conversation points. There's a lot of horror out there that is schlocky and kind of not worth any sort of actual dissection or discussion. But man, The Fly really is. Like there's some really, really cool stuff going on here, interesting stuff going on here with regards to like a debate that is more important now than it ever has been, arguably.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the thing I was going to say and kind of build on what you were talking about, and the reason I give this, for me, an edge over something like Videodrome, I think Videodrome, there's a clarity to The Fly in the third act where all of these threads kind of come together that have been building there, whereas Videodrome gets so weird and esoteric, and there's advantages to that. I prefer something maybe a little bit more like The Fly, which brings all of those threads together and is able to convey its themes with a clarity and a sense of clarity that like this one does.
Yes,
so.
I agree 100%. That's more to my taste.
Yes, and that's the nice thing, and you touch about genre movies, horror movies, when they are like this, is you can as this deals with abortion as the film goes on, but that's layered on top of a lot of other ideas that it's dealing with, where sometimes like in a drama that's specifically about abortion, like it's just about that one thing. So,
absolutely. Well, and I think like we mentioned earlier, like The Fly is a tragic story. It's a tragedy.
Yes.
And it's a tragedy for all of the characters involved, all of them. Even Stathis, it's a tragedy for him too. He gets puked on. But in order to have a story that is tragic, you have to have a heart to the story.
Right.
There has to be heart in that story. There has to be an emotional something to tether you to the story from an emotional perspective. Whether it's the deterioration of Seth Brundle or the struggle of Veronica deciding what to do, and having these different voices trying to tell her what to do regarding her unborn child. There are these different things that can pull you in, and ultimately the romance, really at the end of the day, the romance and that chemistry and stuff is the heart of the film, and you can't have a tragedy without that. The difference between this and Videodrome is just as, in a lot of ways, just as gnarly and dark as The Fly is from a story perspective, but Videodrome doesn't have the heart. Videodrome is very nihilistic and very,
right.
very a very angry film, and even at its absolute most dreadful, and The Fly is very, very dark and very sad and gross and gnarly and all these things, there's still a heart to the film, and it carries through all the way to the end, and that is why the end is such an emotional gut punch, because you do care about the characters.
For sure.
That Videodrome, I never really care about Max Wren. I'm curious to see where the journey takes him, but I'm never like, I sure hope Max makes it through. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. All right, let's finish this plot out.
Yeah.
Seth reveals his final plan to Ronnie. He will use the telepods to fuse the two of them, along with the unborn child, into a single entity to become the ultimate
Yeah,
family.
cut it out, Seth. Too much.
After she accidentally tears off his jaw in a struggle, which triggers his final transformation, shedding his
That
decaying...
is gnarly, too. The
Yes.
skin coming off. Oh.
shedding his decaying flesh to become a monstrous insectoid human creature. I love the word insectoid.
It's so sweet.
Seth traps Ronnie in the first telepod and puts himself in the other and begins the countdown. Always a problem. You got to just go right into it. No, none of these countdowns. This is a Bond villain mistake.
You're setting yourself up for disappointment.
A weakened Stathis recovers his shotgun and severs the cables connecting Ronnie's telepod to the computer. So Stathis has now come full circle. There's a journey for Stathis. He's less of a dick now.
He is kind of a dick most of the movie.
Yes, she even. I think it might be a deleted scene that they put in the. He makes a joke. They put it in the documentary, but he makes a joke. I can't remember if it's in the movie or not. Now they're blending together, but he makes a joke, and she doesn't laugh, and he goes, "Oh, you used to think I was funny," and she goes, "Yeah, I used to think you were funny," because he does suck. Seth breaks halfway out of his own pod, but the fusion process activates, gruesomely amalgamating him with a chunk of the telepod. Seth crawls to Ronnie and places the end of the shotgun to his head, silently begging her to end his suffering.
It's so horrifying.
Kill me. Looking at it, the creature that was once Seth Brundle, she tearfully fires, killing him instantly, and falls to her knees in despair. And that is how the movie ends.
Boom.
That's how you get out of a movie. That's the end of the movie. You don't need an epilogue.
It rocks.
It's over.
I don't want to know what happens to her afterwards or
Nope.
any. Like
Her journey is done as well.
Yep.
Everybody's journey is done.
Yep.
I
love it.
do not need to know. I do not need to know if she kept the child.
Nope.
I
Don't want to know.
Nope.
If you really want to know, watch The Fly 2.
Yeah. I prefer to. Yeah, for sure. You can ignore The Fly 2 if you would like as well.
I prefer to.
What was
there's some cool things about that movie.
So have you seen the sequel?
Yeah.
You have. Okay. I have not seen the sequel.
There's some good stuff. There's some good stuff. It's not particularly kind to the Veronica character, but there's some good stuff in there. It's not very good though. Overall. Yeah.
Oh, this was directed by Chris Wallace, who did the
Yes.
effects. I did not know that. Okay.
There's some really killer effects in it. No surprise. It is kind of a rehash in most ways of the first film, to be honest with you. The Stathis character returns, which is interesting. Eric Stoltz plays the son, the little Brundle, I guess. There's some interesting stuff. It is not something to like bend over backwards to try and seek out.
Yeah.
But if you really want to see a continuation of the story, it's not so bad. It's not. It's watchable. There's really rough dog violence in it though. If you can't handle dog stuff in movies, don't watch it. It's actually like kind of hard to watch in a couple spots. So
that's a good. Thank you for that warning.
Yes.
There was also there was some alternate stuff here. There's the Fly Outbreak, which was an IDW comic book in 2015 that is a direct sequel to the events of Fly 2.
IDW will take any property. I love IDW so much. I can't.
Yes.
I mean that. I think they're awesome. They do really cool shit. Like they do crossovers of Star Trek and Ninja Turtles, and I'm like, this is rules. Like, have you ever read that?
The Star Trek Ninja Turtles? No, I read the Ghostbusters Ninja Turtles. The Infestation, I think.
Which was sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but they'll do anything. They did a Fly comic, Tim.
Yes. Yeah, it was about Seth Brundle's son, Martin. It was a sequel to Fly 2, actually. It continued that, inadvertently causing a transgenic outbreak while attempting to cure Anton Bartok, to whom he'd previously transferred his mutant genes at the end of the Fly 2.
Yeah, that's right.
Rennie Harlan was going to do a sequel with, of course, Gina Davis when they were married. Was said to feature a story where Veronica gives birth to 2 twin boys and herself survives the ordeal. Todd Lincoln was going to do a remake by Fox Searchlight in 2006. Didn't happen. Cronenberg had talked about doing a sequel.
Wow.
Cronenberg stated that he had written, not a remake, but rather a sort of sequel to his 86 version. Yeah, so...
What would Cronenberg's sequel
I'm trying to look.
About? I'm fascinated.
Because my agent found out... Well, you know about David, and they said, well...
Wow.
He does. I don't see any specifics here. I would have to do research on what it was.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear.
Yeah, he basically talks about he says, he described the project as more of a sequel or a sidebar. It was a meditation on flyness. None of the same characters or anything, and of course with the understanding of modern technology. I don't know what that means.
Amazing. So basically, not The Fly 2, which is fine. Love it.
Yeah, and Goldblum said he would be interested in doing a sequel only if Cronenberg was involved, even though his character had died. I don't know what that means either.
I mean, that's just somebody going like, "Hey Jeff, would you do a sequel to The Fly?"
That's
sure.
like something they would ask at San Diego Comic-Con.
Exactly.
And Goldblum's like, yeah.
Jeff, when's The Fly 2 come out? You fucking rule in that movie.
Ignoring the fact that there is a Fly 2. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, amazing.
The last thing I wanted to touch on is I did not know that Be Very Afraid came from this movie. And I didn't know it stemmed from this movie.
From the promotion of the
I always
movie,
thought
right?
it was something that came like way back in the
is it a line in the movie?
It's a line in the movie.
It is, that's
Gina
right.
Davis says it.
Yep.
To the woman.
That's
Tawny.
right. Amazing.
There we go. The Fly.
Excellent.
Hey, good conversation. We're going to close this bad boy up next week, or next episode.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about Dead Ringers, which I have never seen.
I have. It's been a long
I talked
long
to
time.
listener friend, one Mr. David Steele, and he told me he had recently watched Dead Ringers, and he told me I was in for a treat.
Hey, if I remember right, and it's been a while, you're in for a treat, pal.
There's only one way to close this bad boy out, I think.
Yeah. Do you want more squishy sounds, or?
Is there squishy sounds on this one?
I believe so, yes.
What kind?
Well, they're twin gynecologists, so.
Cronenberg plays a
I don't-
gynecologist in The Fly, by the way.
He does. That's right. I love Cronenberg. He has a gun.
All right, let's get out of here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Check us out all over social media. Be safe out there. Take care of each other. Bye-bye.